The stock market floor roared with chaos as numbers on the screens bled red. James felt his throat tighten, his voice caught between disbelief and dread. He whispered, "Everything I worked for is vanishing in front of me." Traders shouted, their eyes wild, papers flew like autumn leaves. The weight of failure crushed him as he saw years of sacrifices dissolve within minutes. Emily called, her voice trembling. "James, what's happening? Our savings." He clenched his jaw, unable to answer. His pulse raced as the bank rejected his desperate transfer request, cold words flashing, funds unavailable. Each second stretched into eternity. Mark, his trusted partner, avoided his gaze, eyes darting nervously, hiding something more sinister. Fear spread across James' chest like fire. The thought of his family's future drowning with his collapsing empire sent him spiraling. He muttered to himself, "This is the end, unless I find a way back." The world around him blurred, but one truth pierced sharply. Survival meant sacrifice. James returned home with heavy steps, the weight of failure clinging to him like a storm cloud. Emily sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling over unpaid bills. She whispered, "What do we do now?" His silence screamed louder than words. The house, once filled with laughter, felt hollow and cold. Their children's toys lay scattered, reminders of a future now uncertain. Emily's eyes searched his, begging for hope he did not have. James finally muttered, "We must find a way, no matter the cost." His voice cracked under the pressure of despair. The silence between them deepened, broken only by the ticking clock that mocked their helplessness. The fear of losing everything pressed against them, suffocating yet undeniable. In a sleek skyscraper office, Mark leaned back in his leather chair, sipping whiskey as the city lights glimmered below. His smirk betrayed the truth James had yet to uncover. He whispered to himself, "One man's ruin is another's gain." He reveled in the chaos, watching numbers climb on his private monitor. The betrayal cut deeper than financial loss. It was personal, a dagger twisted in trust. Mark's ambition thrived as James' world burned. His calm contrasted cruelly with the panic outside. In that quiet luxury, the predator savored the collapse he had orchestrated. David sat beside James the next morning, his voice steady but filled with concern. "You can't carry this weight alone," he said. James rubbed his tired eyes, his face pale and worn. David continued, "We'll figure something out, together." The loyal friend's presence softened the edges of despair, even if only briefly. James exhaled, the air heavy with exhaustion, but he nodded faintly. For a fleeting moment, the bond between them stood as a shield against the darkness closing in. Later that day, James met Richard in a quiet cafe corner. The older man's face bore the scars of past financial battles, his eyes shadowed with regret. Richard said, "I've seen empires fall, James. This system eats the weak alive." James leaned closer, desperate for guidance. Richard sighed, his voice low. "If you want to survive, you must play their game, but play it wiser." His words carried both warning and temptation. The fallen mentor's wisdom was a reflection of the price paid for chasing wealth. James entered Mark's office with hope trembling in his voice. He said, "We need to find a way through this storm." Mark leaned back, his smile cold and detached. James pressed, "You promised we were in this together." Mark's silence carried betrayal. The truth surfaced when Mark finally said, "I've secured my part. You're on your own." The words struck like a hammer, shattering any illusion of partnership. James' stomach knotted as trust collapsed under greed's weight. The room seemed colder, walls closing in on him. He realized the collapse wasn't just about money, but loyalty stolen. His chest tightened, rage and sorrow twisting within. The betrayal burned deeper than financial ruin. The next morning, James sat nervously across a polished bank desk. A stern loan officer shuffled papers, his expression impassive. James said, "This loan is our only chance." The officer shook his head slowly, replying, "Your liabilities are too great." The rejection struck like thunder. James' voice cracked. You don't understand. This isn't just numbers. This is my family's future. But the officer's eyes remained cold, untouched by desperation. The sterile office hummed with fluorescent lights, amplifying the emptiness of denial. Jameson's dreams slipped further away as the door to salvation closed. Each word of refusal echoed in his mind, sealing a coffin of financial despair. That evening, Sarah approached James in hushed tones. Her voice quivered as she said, "There's something you need to know." She slid a folder across the table, her hands trembling. Inside were documents revealing Mark's secret dealings. James' eyes widened, rage flaring. Sarah whispered, "He's been siphoning funds for months." The betrayal cut deeper now, its roots tangled in lies. James' jaw clenched, veins pulsing in his neck. His world wasn't collapsing by chance, but by design. The quiet room pulsed with tension as truth pierced the darkness. The whistleblower's courage became his fragile lifeline, even as it endangered her own world. At home, Emily's hands shook as she spread bills across the table. She whispered, "James, we can't hide this from the children forever." His chest ached, seeing her crumble under the weight. Their daughter's laughter in another room pierced him, sharp and bittersweet. James muttered, "I'll fix this. I promise." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears, the promise sounding thinner with every passing day. The victim of their war wasn't just their bank account, but the innocence of family life. The quiet kitchen carried the heavy silence of despair. Hope seemed further than ever, slipping like water through their desperate fingers. Across town, Mark orchestrated his next move. Surrounded by glowing monitors, he muttered, "This market will bleed, and I'll profit." His fingers danced across the keyboard, manipulating trades with precision. He thrived in destruction, each transaction a blade cutting deeper into James' fate. The screens reflected in his eyes, cold and unfeeling. The empire he sought to build was nourished by the ruins of others. His ambition devoured morality, leaving only greed's echo in his office. In that sterile glow, Mark reveled in his mastery of chaos, the puppeteer pulling strings while others fell. Richard sat across from James, his eyes heavy with regret. He said, "I once believed I was untouchable, but pride devoured me." His voice carried the weight of scars carved by greed. James leaned forward, listening with desperate intensity. Richard continued, "I lost everything when I ignored the signs. I thought the system bent to me, but I was only a pawn." His hands trembled as he lifted his coffee cup, staring into it as though it reflected the wreckage of his past. James whispered, "So what now? What can I do?" Richard sighed. "You learn. You fight smarter. You stop chasing glory and start protecting what matters." The words fell like a warning and a gift. James nodded, hope flickering in his weary eyes. Later that day, James stumbled upon a forgotten folder at the back of his desk drawer. Inside lay records of a dormant investment he had once dismissed. His pulse quickened as he whispered, "Could this still work?" He spread the papers across the desk, tracing numbers that shimmered like a faint light in darkness. Emily entered quietly, asking, "What have you found?" James lifted his head, his eyes sparking with cautious hope. "Maybe a lifeline," he murmured. The discovery wasn't a fortune, but it carried the seed of possibility. For the first time in weeks, he saw a crack in the wall of despair. That evening, James spread the documents on the dining table. David leaned over, brow furrowed. "This is madness," he said, tapping the numbers. James replied firmly, "It's risk, but it's the only path left." David shook his head, frustration breaking his calm. "You're gambling with everything." James' hands tightened around the papers. He whispered, "I can't let them win, not Mark, not the system." Their eyes locked, loyalty clashing with fear. David's loyalty trembled under the weight of uncertainty. Silence pressed between them, thick with conflict, the bond of trust stretched thin. In the quiet of their children's room, Emily tucked blankets around their daughter, her smile fragile. James leaned against the doorway, guilt heavy in his chest. Emily whispered, "They deserve better than this chaos." James' voice cracked, "I know, but I'll find a way." Their daughter stirred in her sleep, innocence untouched by the storm outside. Emily glanced at James, eyes pleading for reassurance he could not give. The weight of family bore down harder than numbers on a ledger. The fragile moment reminded James that his fight was more than money, it was for them. Mark leaned across his sleek desk, his smile cutting like a knife. "James," he said during their tense meeting, "I can solve your problems. For a price." James felt anger boiling beneath his skin. He replied coldly, "Your deals come with chains." Mark smirked, "Chains or salvation? It's your choice." The trap glittered with false promise. James's fists clenched, his silence speaking louder than words. The room buzzed with unspoken tension, predator and prey circling in silence. Mark's calm arrogance filled the air, while James fought to keep hope alive without surrendering his soul. James walked down the street as dusk settled, debt collectors trailing him like shadows. One shouted, "Time's up, James, pay what you owe." His stomach twisted, fear gripping tighter than ever. He turned, his voice shaking, "I just need more time." Their cold eyes showed no mercy. The weight of unpaid promises pressed against his chest. Every step forward felt like sinking in quicksand. Emily's face flashed in his mind, her worry a constant reminder of what was at stake. The world closed in, darker and more threatening with each passing moment. Sarah sat in a dim archive room, files spread across a wooden desk, her hands trembling as she uncovered evidence. Her whisper broke the silence. Mark engineered this collapse. Pages revealed hidden accounts and fraudulent trades. Her chest tightened with fear, yet courage flared in her eyes. She muttered, "The truth can't stay buried forever." The glow of a single lamp illuminated her discovery, the documents damning enough to shatter Mark's empire. Shadows loomed large, but the weight of integrity steadied her resolve. Richard sat across from James in the quiet of a park bench, his voice edged with warning. He said, "I've seen men gamble everything and vanish." James' hands tightened around his knees, resolve growing beneath fear. Richard's gaze was sharp, scarred by history. "Don't let desperation blind you," he muttered. James lifted his head, voice steady. "I can't stop now. I've come too far." Richard sighed, his words carrying the weight of hard-earned scars. "Then be ready to pay the price." The silence between them hung heavy with truth and consequence. In the stillness of his office, James closed the door and spread documents across the desk. His breath was shallow, but his eyes blazed with resolve. He whispered, "This is my chance." He scribbled notes, cross-checking numbers against forgotten investments. His hands trembled, not from fear but from the weight of decision. Outside the world doubted him, but inside the room he built the foundation of a gamble that could save everything. The silence was alive with urgency, every tick of the clock hammering the cost of failure. David paced the small living room, his voice rising. "You're risking everything, James." His loyalty battled with fear. James stood firm, his tone unyielding. "I won't let them win." The tension between them thickened, years of friendship straining under the weight of desperation. David's fists clenched, his eyes burning with frustration. He muttered, "If this fails, we lose more than money." Silence echoed after his words, each second carrying doubt and anger. The bond between them hung by a fragile thread, stretched by the gamble James was about to take. James sat alone in his office, flipping through dusty files that smelled of forgotten time. His hand stopped on one document, a record of a small real estate share he had overlooked. His eyes widened as numbers revealed potential growth hidden beneath years of neglect. He whispered, "This might be the chance I've been searching for." The room seemed to brighten with the faint spark of opportunity. Hope swelled in his chest, fragile yet powerful. Emily's voice echoed in his mind, her faith fueling his determination. The discovery wasn't wealth yet, but it was a doorway to possibility, a step toward redemption. Emily stood in the kitchen, hands gripping the edge of the counter as James revealed his discovery. Her voice trembled. "Are you certain this is real?" James nodded, his tone steady. "It could be our way out." She looked at him with eyes filled with both hope and fear. The weight of years of struggle pressed between them, but this moment carried a fragile spark. Emily whispered, "Promise me you won't lose us chasing this." James' chest ached as he answered, "This is for us, Emily, for our future." The silence that followed carried both burden and fragile belief. The next day, Sarah met James in secret. She whispered, "You need to see this," sliding across new evidence of Mark's fraud. His stomach twisted as he realized the betrayal went deeper than imagined. James said, "He was feeding off my fall the whole time." Sarah's eyes reflected both fear and conviction. She answered, "The truth is dangerous, but it's the only way to fight him." The folder on the table burned like fire, proof that the storm wasn't just chance but orchestrated destruction. For the first time, James saw the full scale of the battle he faced. James stood before the dusty board of brokers, presenting his plan with fire in his voice. He declared, "I'm ready to put everything I have into this investment." The room was thick with skepticism, whispers echoing against marble walls. His heart raced, but his eyes never wavered. The gamble was immense, but his conviction was unshakable. Each word he spoke carried the weight of his family's future. The tension in the air was a razor's edge, but James pressed on. His declaration was a leap into the unknown, a decision that could either destroy or save everything he loved. Across the city, Mark leaned back in his chair, watching James' moves through insider reports. He chuckled darkly, muttering, "Let him gamble. It'll only make his fall sweeter." His fingers tapped against the desk, arrogance flowing in every gesture. The empire he built on manipulation seemed untouchable. Mark thrived on others' desperation, feeding his ambition with their pain. His smirk grew as he imagined James collapsing under the weight of risk. The predator saw only victory, blind to the storm Sarah's evidence was about to unleash. The trading floor buzzed with tension as James watched the numbers climb and fall. His chest tightened with every flicker of red and green on the screens. He whispered, "This is it. Everything rides on this moment." Emily's voice replayed in his mind, her hope clashing with his fear. The weight of every debt, every broken promise pressed against him. Traders shouted, screens glowed, and James' trembling hand hovered over the keyboard. He muttered, "Hold steady, don't lose faith." The gamble was alive, spinning like a coin in midair, waiting to land either salvation or ruin. James stormed into Mark's office, fury boiling in his eyes. He slammed his fist on the desk and shouted, "You set me up!" Mark leaned back, calm and smug, replying, "You played the game, James. I just played better." The room pulsed with tension as predator and prey faced off. James' fists clenched, his breathing heavy. Mark's smirk widened, his arrogance unshaken. The silence between their words screamed louder than the accusations. James hissed, "You won't bury me." Mark's laugh echoed like a blade cutting through the air, mocking his resolve. Sarah stood before James, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "I have the proof," she said, sliding a USB drive across the table. His eyes widened as he grasped it, whispering, "This could end him." Sarah's face tightened, shadows of fear etched around her eyes. She muttered, "If he finds out I leaked this, I'm finished." James nodded, his gratitude heavy with unspoken promises. The small device carried the weight of war, evidence sharp enough to cut through Mark's empire. Their eyes locked, bound by fragile courage and the danger of truth. Richard sat across from James in a quiet bar, his glass half empty. His voice was low and heavy. "I gambled everything once and lost it all. Don't make my mistake." James studied his face, searching for guidance in the ruins of a fallen man. "What?" Richard sighed, eyes clouded with regret. "The market doesn't forgive. It devours." James replied, "But if I don't risk it, we lose everything anyway." Richard's silence carried more weight than words. The warning was clear: redemption always carried a price. Back at home, David stood by the window, staring out into the night. He said, "I can't let you go through this alone." James turned, surprise softening his hardened features. David continued, "We've fought battles before, but this one decides everything." His loyalty burned through the fear in his eyes. James whispered, "I don't deserve your faith, but I need it." David placed a hand firmly on his shoulder, steadying him. In that moment, loyalty became armor, binding them together for the storm ahead. The market surged with unexpected strength, and James watched as his investment finally bore fruit. His hands shook, but his eyes filled with relief. He whispered, "It worked. We're saved." Emily entered the room, her face softening as she saw the numbers rising. Tears welled in her eyes as she said, "You did it, James." The air filled with a sense of triumph, fragile but real. For the first time in years, the weight on his chest lifted. Their future had shifted, and hope finally had a place at their table. That evening, the family gathered around the dinner table. The meal was simple, yet it tasted of victory. Emily smiled, her voice trembling with gratitude. "We have a second chance." Their children laughed, their joy piercing the silence that had haunted the house. James sat quietly, absorbing the moment, the sound of laughter reminding him why he had fought so hard. He whispered to himself, "This is what it was all for." The home, once shadowed by despair, now glowed with warmth and life. In his tower office, Mark's empire crumbled. News reports blared across his screens, exposing fraudulent trades. His whiskey glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He shouted in rage, "No, this can't be happening." His arrogance dissolved into panic as the foundation he built collapsed beneath him. For the first time, his smile was gone, replaced by fear. The predator had become prey, undone by his own greed. The world outside his window continued without him, indifferent to his fall. James sat with Richard and Sarah in a quiet cafe. Richard lifted his cup, his voice weary yet proud. "You fought the system and survived." Sarah smiled faintly. "The truth set you free." James nodded, his voice steady. It wasn't just about money. It was about protecting what mattered most. Their faces carried the scars of battle, but also the strength of survival. In that moment, they shared more than coffee. They shared redemption. The struggle had changed them, binding their stories together forever. That night, James stood alone at the window, city lights glowing beneath him. He whispered, "One choice saved us." His reflection stared back, not of a broken man but of someone forged by fire. Emily's laughter drifted from another room, anchoring him in peace. The scars remained, but so did the lesson. Fortune was fragile, but love was unbreakable. With a deep breath, he turned away from the glass, ready to step into tomorrow with hope, no longer defined by fear.